Cades Cove is a popular attraction in Smoky Mountain National Park, but did you know it was once a thriving community, complete with homes, stores, churches, and so forth? Of course, that was before the park was created. Well, now there's a museum in Maryville that captures life in Cades Cove before the Smoky Mountain National Park, and Rob Wiles is going to take us there.
When this film was made in 1936, the federal government was touting the creation of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and the preservation of a way of life.
National parks have distinguishing features. In the Great Smokies, there is being preserved a record of the life and customs of some of the most interesting of the early American pioneers.
What the film didn't say was that hundreds of the descendants of those pioneers still lived in Cades Cove and other areas that were taken for the park, and they were forced to move, and the light dimmed on a way of life.
We've come a long way.
Dimmed but never went out, and still kept alive by these folks and others, members of the Cades Cove Preservation Association. They had their own museum in Maryville, and all, like Dorothy Gregory Sutton, have direct ties to Cades Cove.
My father was Howard Clarence Gregory, and he married Ora Ethel Lane. They were both born in Cades Cove, and we didn't move out of Cades Cove until 1939, but my daddy always went back. We went back every weekend, just about.
Dorothy has many of her family heirlooms here, and that's the point of the museum, according to Director Gloria Motter.
When you drive the cove now, there's just a few cabins left. We only have 3 churches still standing, and in here they can see the items that was used in each one of those churches. We have them here. The only way to know what Cades Cove really was about, instead of now it's the bears and the wildlife, it was all the humans that lived there, the families that made it home all through the years.
Ken Garland knows all about this shelling machine. It came from Cades Cove, just like Ken's family did.
Both my parents were born in Cades Cove. My mother's family moved when she was 2 years old, and my father moved out with his family when they had to give up their land for the national park. I think he was probably about 14 or 15. Everything in here came from the cove. It came from families who lived there. And if it didn't come from the cove, then we don't have it in here. It goes somewhere else. People can come in here and they get an idea of how families lived up there. You know, there was no electricity, so all the boards were planed. This table that belonged to my great-grandfather here was hand-planed. He put it together with pegs and everything. He stained it. It's walnut. And if you look on the top of it, the top is, and it's wide, 3 boards. So the boards are really wide. And people get a chance, they come in here, they get a chance to see that, to see the things that people used up there, their everyday life. And that's, to us, that's one of the most important things.
Important to all of us, according to Richard Anderson.
It's a part of our history. You can talk about a kettle, and your mind says a lot of things. But when you can see that, and I can say, this was my great-grandmother's kettle. Her hands was on that at one time. She used this. So it brings a special meaning out to be able to touch something that belonged to my ancestors.
Stories of people's lives are tied up in these things, like how Dorothy's husband got into the Navy thanks to some bananas.
In order to enter the Navy, you have to weigh 130 pounds. He only weighed 128.
Oh my gosh.
Well, he went down to the market and bought 2 pounds of bananas and ate 2 pounds of bananas and went back in, and he weighed 130, so he passed the physical.
Well, all right.
Remember, Dorothy's father was one of those forced to leave Cades Cove, and he was bitter about that for the longest time.
He objected to the park taking over because, well, Number one, a lot of the people, when they got paid by the park, they put their money in the bank, and we had the Depression, and they lost their money too, so they lost all the way around. And he didn't like it that the park had taken over the property. But in later years, he'd go back every weekend. One of us kids would take him. And he said, well, I guess it's best that it was a park, or I wouldn't be able to come back and sit up here.
That's us, glad we can sit up there, or drive through there, or fish in there. Glad we have the park, but also glad that the people who lived there are remembered in the Cades Cove Museum in Maryville.